Um, is Ellen's on?
Do you hear me? Yang, yang? No.
Is it one of those three? That's,
Hello? Nope. It's this one.
that's the one. Sorry, we
Sorry.
used them as paperweights and got mixed up. Okay, so you're good now, Alan?
I'm good now.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Well, thanks y'all for being here. This is the 600 Sustainability Panel, and the title of the panel, according to Filmscape, is myth busting, which isn't going to be the main target, but let's just say the most general myth about sustainability in film production is that it's unachievable, and we are here today to myth bust that. I'm Stephanie Dufford. I'm a Local 600 Director of Photography and Camera Operator. I'm also a Chicago co-chair of Local 600 Sustainability Committee, along with Nihal Dent-Lurie, who would be here but had a family situation and is actually in India right now. These are my guests. This is Marlon Bracamontes.
Yeah.
Hey.
Close enough.
Uh-oh, what is it?
Bracamontes.
Bracamontes. And this is Ellen White. Marlon's company is called Green Sets, and Ellen's is EcoFixer. Both of their companies started in 2024, and they serve the Chicago area. I'll just give a little background about the similarities here. They both work in the commercial space currently, with hopes to expand to larger film production. And I believe they are meeting each other for the first time today.
We are.
Which is kind of cool, bringing the sustainability family together. Thank you guys for being here and for all you do. One more touch on a myth is the biggest myth about film production sustainability practice is about money. And when I vetted them, talked to them before this, they both said that, I was very happily surprised that they both said that companies are budgeting for sustainability. Now, how much money is budgeted is only so far that they can.
Progress.
Yeah, but the fact that that's happening at all is really great news, even in a small market like Chicago, and it's really because I think larger markets are doing that, and there's an expectation of it, and so now it's starting to kind of bleed into some of the smaller markets. So, questions for you guys. What is your relationship with the film industry, and why did you start your companies?
Should we go down the line?
Sure.
Okay. Again, my name is Marlon. I have worked in the commercial space for about 7 years now. I was very much more connected to the music industry prior to that, so always had a foot in production. But about 7 years ago, I had always wanted to work in film, realized that there was a robust film industry happening in Chicago, and kind of made that jump. I started at the bottom, was a production assistant, and then for the last 4 to 5 years or so, I have been a production coordinator and a manager. I mostly work on commercial, which will be different from, I think, a lot of people's experience on the pictures and the shows and whatnot, and I think that brings its own specific needs and requirements to the sustainable production efforts. But past that, like I said, I've mostly come at this from just being someone who has been in production, has seen what happens on set, have tried to mitigate some of it by myself, like on the fly, and that's just in its own way not very sustainable. So I guess I'm just here as a frustrated production person, and now there seems to be actually a official effort towards speaking to sustainability.
Great. I'm Ellen with EcoFixer. I actually started out in theater as a production manager, and that's when I really started, hi Steve, really started to see all of the waste, because much like film, they build these big sets and then tear them all down and throw them away. Then I transitioned into the film world, was doing PA work as well, and then I started working at One Chicago, and so I was able to see just progressively more and more and more waste happening as the productions got bigger. And so when the strike happened, I was like, there's got to be a solution to this. There has to be. Like, this just can't be happening. And so I also did research, and there's amazing pioneers out there that have been doing sustainability services and have been had some great success with it in California, New York, across seas, Canada. It's happening everywhere. And so and the resources out there to do it yourself. There are. Green Production Guide, amazing. But it's a lot. It's a lot. And you guys already have so much to do, you know? So it's much like COVID. You need a point person to really help make sure that it's constantly being thought of at every step, not just the waste diversion, every step, storytelling, all of that. So that's kind of my background right now.
And then can each of you speak to what sustainable practices you offer productions? And you can start with like maybe what you standardly do because it's kind of the lowest overhead to the more, maybe larger efforts with more money.
I think the number one thing that's very easy and achievable is the elimination of single-use plastics, both in our, plasticware that we eat with, as well as our water bottles. That seems to be like a real big thing that we can do, and probably one of the things I see people trying to do the most. Oftentimes, I've seen it added to like a craft services person's responsibilities to do that, which, again, we're trying to find ways to not deflect these responsibilities onto other people who are already super busy throughout their day. But the elimination of single-use plastics is major, depending on the size of the production, the location. Are we on set? Are you in the middle of a field? I mean, that will probably dictate how you will go about that. And there's a number of options, from anything that you can do, from being able to just be on a stage where you often will have some type of water service available, and maybe promoting stages to be a little more aggressive with having that available, and then just in your call sheets asking for people to bring their own water bottles, and then maybe having reusable water bottles accessible. That would be my way to kind of kick off the elimination of single-use plastics, especially the focus of water bottles. And then in terms of your catering, that again will be dictated by the length and the time and the location of your production, but I think there's room to probably do that a little better, depending whether we are just focusing on really doing like the rigor to find that we are using actual products that do meet all the sustainability recommendations, because there is a lot of BS out there on what is recyclable or compostable. So just doing the work on that, I think, is important. And then I think there's just offering recycling guidance and then execution on that, which I think you've seen around the location today. You've seen some of Ellen and EcoFixer's just various waste disposal units. What would you refer to them as?
Yeah, recycling bins.
Yeah, but they have like amazing guidance on them. And I think that's important because, that it does require a degree of guidance. In a situation where the budget allows, I think having a person who actually can take the waste, I think I've seen that at a lot of more sustainability-minded street festivals, where you do see people that are just taking waste from you and making sure it goes into the right place, because there's a lot of room for error. I'm sure you've dealt with that, and that's not a fun thing to deal with, sorting trash, but we will do it.
Yeah.
Composting food waste. I mean, I imagine you're probably going to say a lot of the same things.
Yeah.
Why don't you do the composting one?
Okay. Well, I'll go over a little bit what our company offers. So we always say it's best to start from the beginning, because if you're thinking about sustainability from the beginning, you're able to find all of the minute points, and having somebody helping you guide, okay, with a story, how can we make this look like it's actually from real life? Showing recycling, it also helps with advocating that. Then going to the costumers, saying, okay, can we possibly rent? Because that's a big issue of sustainability. Finding just each department, we talk to them, figure out ways that we can incorporate it. And then another big portion of what we do is resource recovery, which is it's called zero waste, but we have eco-reps on site, and we are sorting through things, helping people, guiding them in, empowering them, having the conversation, because I think what's really important too is just having that conversation, because a lot of people don't even know what compost is, and compost is complicated, depends on where you go, what you can do with it. So just helping them guide that. And then we also make sure We are rescuing any of the furniture afterwards, props, costumes, all of that. We find charity to take that to. Another big one is the food portion of it, which we throw away so much food that is totally usable. So my team is making sure that we're keeping the food at a food safety point, and then we have a company called Rescuing Leftover Cuisine. Highly recommend them. They're amazing. And then they take that food and find a charity in your location that they donate it to. So then the charity, the area that you're actually directly affecting, we're giving back to. Because that's a big part of sustainability too, is like we forget while we're creating that what we're doing is also impacting people. So it's about bringing awareness to like, how do we give back to this community? And so that's part of like what we're here to do, is to help you be able to focus on what you're doing, because what you're doing is amazing, and just helping you find new ways to do it that is not going to be disruptive as much as possible, and just finding new ways. Like I'm really into the alternative energy right now. There's some amazing vendors out there. Highly recommend you go talk to them. New Use Energy, there's Sunbelt, Salty Dog. They all have this equipment that is going to help eliminate diesel generators, which is going to be so huge. And I think because Chicago's a little behind in incorporating this, and that's okay. We're gonna get there. And it's great people like you that are here to like help us advocate for it. And I really think that when we just need to dive in and catch up with everybody.
I'm going to just speak to the basic things that you guys do in some of the facts. These are directly from the Environmental Protection Agency, just to solidify that this work is important, even if it's not doing everything or it seems like it's not very much. As far as food waste is concerned, and maybe everyone in this room is aware, I was still kind of shocked to read the numbers. Over one third of food produced in the United States is never eaten. So that's a waste of the resources used to produce it, and it creates a myriad of environmental issues. So food waste is the single most common material landfilled and incinerated in the United States. Food. You know, and like we talk about food insecurity. I didn't realize. I knew it was a lot, but a third is more than I thought. So 24% of food is landfilled and 22% is combusted of municipal solid waste. As the United States strives to meet the Paris Agreement targets to limit the increase in global temperature to 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels, changes to the food system are essential. And this I found really interesting. Even if fossil fuel emissions were halted, current trends in the food system would prevent achievement of the goal. So when I think about sustainability, I think like, oh, I drive an electric car, and I think about emissions, and I think about, but food waste like is so major. So being aware, composting, rescuing food that is still edible to those with food insecurity, this stuff is really important and basic and doable. And then also to speak to single-use plastic, the U.S. plays a critical role in the global economy of plastic products. The Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development estimates that the U.S., just the U.S., consumes 18% of global plastic products. And plastic use per capita is higher than in any other country globally. So we see a lot of plastic, we worry about plastic, it's a US problem. It's a global problem, but it's a big US problem. So, and this stat is sad to me, and it says in 2018, only 9% of plastic collected through municipal solid waste was recycled in the United States. So that's not meant to be overly discouraging, but what I take away from it is like avoid plastic because it's not getting recycled. And if we can lower the demand, then that stuff isn't going to be going into our landfills and hurting our marine life and all the things. So once in the environment, research shows that plastic pollution is persistent and takes between 100 and 1,000 years to decompose, depending on environmental conditions. So the World Economic Forum projects that without intervention, the global plastics industry will account for 20% of total oil consumption and up to 15% of global carbon emissions by 2050. So what we can do as individuals, as productions, is we can bring our water bottles. And I see a lot of people doing that, and I think younger people are doing that, and they're more successful at it and remembering and incorporating that in their daily routine than some of the older folks. Myself and older, we didn't always do that. But these are really important efforts, I guess, is the point, not to devastate you with numbers. Off of that, I wanted to ask you, in my mind, when I think about sustainability for film production, I think the biggest hurdles are the budget, obviously. You need money because it requires resources and logistics to achieve waste aversion and whatnot. So the budget, I also think that the culturally embedded convenience mindset is really hard to break through. We all are just like, oh, I forgot water today. I'm just gonna stop at the gas station and buy or whatever, I can't think of a name of Ice Mountain or whatever, and then that piece of plastic is in the environment for 1,000 years or more. So that's what I mean by culturally embedded convenience mindset. Sometimes it takes a little bit of forward thinking to be sustainable, and we are a culture of convenience. And then also just the bandwidth, like you guys have mentioned, of crew size, either your craft team is one person, or you have a craft team of 3 people, which is adequate, but they don't necessarily want to have to drive the food to the local food bank. They're interested in rescuing their food, but there is a level of bandwidth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I'm just wondering if there are other things, or with all of those in mind, if you agree, how do you guys overcome that now?
Yeah, so I think one of the big things that right now I'm trying to do to address those is education, because I think that the problem is we just don't know about these services. We don't know about how to incorporate them, and just bringing awareness to it. But I think that another part of the budget, Robert, who is doing a film, beautiful film, if you're really into sustainability, highly recommend you come see it.
That's later today.
Yeah, that's later today. So they did everything on renewable energy, but he said that sustainability is equilibrium balance. So there's no such thing as zero waste, right? So we're just trying to figure out how to balance the budget, get what we're trying to achieve, while also incorporating these things. So that means, okay, well, maybe we aren't going to order quite so much food so that we're not throwing away food. That's a great way to save cost. By eliminating buying all of these water bottles, that's gonna help eliminate costs, and finding ways to incorporate that. Buying used instead of brand new, that's gonna be, so it's actually adding sustainability is so choice for indie films specifically, because you guys are already incorporating it. So it's just about learning how to talk about it and brag about it, honestly. Because you deserve to be bragging about it. You deserve to be talking about it, even though you don't understand that, don't even realize that you're doing it. And I think once we start all talking about it, and bragging is not the correct word that I'm trying to think, but there's also things like the EMAs, the Environmental Media Association. You can get a gold seal, a green seal for your efforts, and that's just a little bit more value. That's a little bit more legitimacy you're adding to your production, and just something else to talk about, and when you're trying to promote stuff, having stuff to talk about the importance of your film is always super helpful. So that's something to think about. And it also gets you on the radar, Hey, this person's actually this person's being progressive. This person's taking risks. They're trying stuff and that's why I really think what's cool about it is this is I mean, this might be a bold statement, but I think this is the future of how we're going to start doing things. It just has to be out of necessity, but it is also breeding such cool things. So I think getting the stakeholders and producers to understand that it is a lot of work. We're here to help you, but it's going to add value. It really is. But it is a struggle. I will be fully transparent. It's a struggle. We're getting there, though. So just trying to get the word out there and having people, amazing people like Stephanie, supporting the movement, if you will.
In general, I agree with that. I think education and adding value. I think the education part is the step in adding value. To just be straightforward, you got to hype it up on the streets pretty much. Like, people need to talk about it, and it just needs to become a normal thing that we are discussing when going into production. Now, in terms of adding value, there are ways to do that, but I think that's where the groundswell of conversation will motivate that. I'm a hopeful cynic at heart. I think that people have trouble doing more or taking less without there being an incentive attached in our current society. So I think we need to think about how do we organically create those incentives. I think that does happen via education and having it being normalized in the conversation. And then something that I also would want to focus on, this, and we've said this before, and this is in regard to bandwidth, these efforts can't just be the tasks that are just added to the PA's day, where suddenly now they're just doing this. I say this because I think too often the responsibility of any structural change is deflected from the top and usually absorbed at the bottom. And that would be, I think, antithetical to the general theme of what we're trying to do here. We are trying to reach towards, I think, sustainability in a greater effort of mindfulness and equity. And in terms of making it work, I just think the best goal is you want to go for seamless integration. We don't want this to turn into COVID protocols where we're wagging our fingers in people's faces. We don't want this to be politicized. It doesn't have to be. It's just a matter of housekeeping. And I think each production, based on their budget, based on the logistics, that'll dictate how you approach that. And I think if that's the general principle in approaching sustainability on set, I think that will, again, fuel the groundswell of conversation, which will then fuel the larger legislative talks around creating incentives. I mean, we have an incentive for diversity here in Chicago. Why don't we have an incentive for sustainability? I think those are things that would benefit the individual production, the environment, and probably the Chicago production community as a whole, that if we could put that stamp on this is how we do business here, I don't think that would be a bad thing.
And on a hopeful note, I completely agree with incentives, that it is something that is on the Chicago Film Office and the Illinois Film Office's awareness of incorporating incentives. So just advocating for that and letting them know, letting the stakeholders know this is important to you, can just help the effort. But that is something that we're actively trying to get incorporated because, again, it's not just going to benefit production. It's not just going to benefit the community. It's also going to benefit Illinois. It's going to benefit Chicago. So if we add that initiative, because it's just another thing that's like, hey, look what we're doing. We're being forward thinking in this. So
look at how we do business here.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
Awesome. Third parties play a big role in what you guys do, which I think is interesting. I guess it's probably that way across the industry with vendors and whatnot, now that I think about it. But I just wondered how you choose or, and what that means to people who don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in my current and previous production work of being a coordinator and a manager, I'm pretty much a vendor aggregator already. I mean, that's all I do is hire people and make sure people show up at a certain time of day. So this pretty much just is an extension of that. And I think now when we say vendor, we're just talking about different companies who process waste in different ways that eliminate landfill. I think I'm stumbling on some of the language here.
You're fine.
But that eliminate landfill waste.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the case of reusing materials, people or organizations, non-for-profits that will benefit from being offered some of the materials that we use. My favorite one is a place called the Waste Shed in Evanston. They will take any art supply or anything they want, and they give it, it's pretty much just a place that kids can go in and shop. Cool. Community theater, community gardens, all those places will take your lumber, depending on the amount of use, And I think all those are just interesting opportunities for using our materials. I do have a couple places, like I bring cardboard, and I think the only note I would put upon that is that like they do it for their living. So, I mean, not to again sound like a cynic, but I sometimes put my faith in the general, I wouldn't say greed of a business, but the need to be profitable. So I can see that this cardboard company that just all they do is process cardboard and paper waste, like that's what they do. That is their business. They've been doing it for like 50 years. So there's a certain amount of faith that that's being done there. Because I will say I sometimes feel a little iffy about the Chicago recycling programs because there's just no management of them. Like anything can go in those dumpsters at any time, and the mixing of waste immediately makes anything recyclable non-viable to go to, I think, various people who would process it.
Yeah.
So there's really not a lot of management there. So again, I like the idea of a company who is extracting some amount of profit from doing this, because that instills a degree of faith that business is actually getting done.
Yeah, that's great. In regards to recycling and all of that, I recently went to Lakeshore Recycling Center, and and again, it is based on profitability, but that's more incentive for them to make sure that they're rescuing these resources and educating people, because you're right, people throw dog waste in the recycling, and then all of that is gone. But which is also why it's helpful to have our team on set, because we're making sure we are literally getting into the garbage and finding the can and being like, nope, that goes over here, making sure that everybody knows where to put things, so that when we hand it over, we're confident that that's going to be composted. We're confident that that we have done everything we can to make it recycled. In regards to the one location that I went to, because there's multiple recycling centers here, that one does have a good diversion rate from landfill, and they feel confident in their paper recycling. They feel confident in their glass recycling. Plastic is a little harder. And it's not recycled, it's upcycled. So it's being used to make carpets, being used to make banners, being used to make different things, just being repurposed, essentially. But again, that's why it can't actually be recycled as repurposed, which is why we need to find different resources, think about that, thinking about what we're purchasing. Yeah, but I just realized I didn't talk about the vendors, which is your question.
That's okay.
So in regards to vendors, I do try to make sure that they have a sustainability clause, because that shows that they actually care, that it's something that's important to them. And I try to talk to them, try to make it local too. That's something that I think is super important, is local, because there's so much amazing talent here. Why are we not using it? And it's same with all of the bigger venues, the food rescuing that we use, the recycling companies that we use, the compost companies, finding those ways to connect them to people that have shared values.
Awesome. I might jump ahead. I don't know how much time. I just want to speak a little bit to what LA is doing, and then I have some notes about things I've learned about, and then we can talk more about it or not. Because there is this sense that the state of California does more. They've always been further incentivized and ahead of the game and progressive. So LA is doing more, but they're also doing these same sustainable practices that we are speaking to: food waste reduction, composting, recycle sorting, refillable water stations, and just general waste diversion. So we're already doing all that, which is great. LA is doing more that we can look to and look forward to, and it's really happening because the big studios are headquartered there, and those studios have their own sustainability departments. So they have some infrastructure, which helps. And we're at the beginning of this here in our smaller market. But LA encourages and provides renewable diesel for production vehicles, which is really awesome. That is basically low carbon fuel. So that's a significant emission deflection. And I guess I just learned that New York launched its very first renewable diesel fuel station in 2024. So it's even new for New York. In LA, it is now common that productions have sustainability crew positions, and they have sustainability strategies going into production, and that they have carbon footprint reports completed. So that's becoming more regular, and that's something that isn't happening here, but we hope we're on the forefront for. So you can go in and know what your options are before you start shooting, and it's not just this scramble during, and that you also have data at the end of it, so you can see and look to, like, this is how much we recycled, or this is how much this is the small amount we sent to landfill, or whatnot. And well, we can talk more about carbon footprint in a minute. LA has many opportunities for sustainability production training, as we spoke to. A huge part of success for sustainability is raising awareness and educating people, because that just is going to expand the impact, because more people are going to understand it and be aware of it. And also LA is focusing on clean energy options, which, you know, Ellen's super engaged in right now here. Because power is such a significant part of our industry in particular. And there are portable electric systems used to power industry tools and even base camps in LA, which is pretty cool. There are currently demo days going on in Los Angeles for what's called the New Clean Mobile Power Initiative, which is aiming to increase the availability of clean alternatives to diesel generators used in the entertainment industry. And they intend to accomplish this by unifying demand and then accelerating supply for mobile batteries, hydrogen power units, and hybrid systems. So LA hasn't gotten it all figured out. They're still trying to figure out how to do clean energy, because we use power like it's our job to do what we do. So LA, you know, they're maybe further along, but they're still in progress. And so that's hopeful and good for us. I don't know if either of you want to speak to that.
Well, and in regards to being, LA also has the same struggles that we do with compost and recycling. That's why they hire companies, because the general public still doesn't know how to do that. So, and it also just helps, because when you go up to a 3-stream bin, it's hard to be like, you just want to go back to work. You just want to get rid of it, go back to work. So that is something about that. And then I wanted to touch base on data. That is something that is so important for the progress of this. And California has great data, New York has great data, Atlanta, but there's not really anything for Chicago right now. So that's something that we can help with. And we give you the data, the carbon footprint analysis, as well as your sustainability analysis. So you get to see everything that you've done great, where the problems are, and how to move forward. And that's also super helpful for the stakeholders.
Yeah, and that was one of my questions, like, how is data essential? Because I know you bring scales,
Yes,
right? I mean,
yes.
how do you measure? How does one measure?
So we weigh all of the waste. We weigh the landfill, we weigh the recycling, we weigh the compost, we weigh anything that we try to weigh the donated food, everything, so that we have an exact number of what we diverted. So we can say, with confidence, we diverted 90%, which is the goal, it's 90%. And only 10% goes to the landfill. So that's the main way, but then you also are analyzing the flights. And that information is out there on how to, there's calculators out there for measuring the exact flight that person took. And another thing to note is that depending on how you fly. If you fly economy, your carbon footprint is going to be significantly lower than if you fly business, first class. So it's things like that, like just taking the data most of it is already there. Some of it we're aggregating by measuring, by weighing, LAM is part of weighing the trash. But it does, that's how we can confidently give information. And also, because we are a third party that they're hiring, that the information is not biased. Like, we're going to be honest. If you miss something, we're going to put that in the report so that oh, okay, this is what this is kind of where we didn't do well. So this is how we can move forward. And it also shows that you are trying to move forward,
Do you have?
Yeah, I mean, the weight, data in regards to measuring results, 100%. My answer that I initially had for that was I'd say that, my efforts are more informed by science than hard data, but obviously science is informed by data. I have a mixed relationship with data. We've said that so many times in the last 30 seconds. I have a weird relationship with it in the sense that, yes, it provides a roadmap for where we need to focus, but I can also see in a way that it can feel very overwhelming at times. And I think that overwhelming feeling keeps a lot of people from engaging these ideas. So one of the things that I constantly like to stress is I can see how the data can feel like a lot, and I constantly like to tell people just a little bit goes a long way in any of these efforts. Whatever you're doing, it helps. And when you look at the big picture, like if everyone didn't use a plastic fork on set and everyone did that, and you look at how that affects the data and how that expands into the world, it's profound. So it's not like anyone has to do anything that major on their own. So in that regard, I love data to show you how easy it can be. I also see how it can freak you out. So I'd say don't let the data freak you out. Do what you can. Use it to inform, I'd say, realistic, on-the-ground decisions.
So, guys, we all are sustainability people. We're all inspired by this. What do you do when you're feeling doomsday? How do you stay positive?
So the way that I stay positive is I think about all of the really, so one of the big facts that I think about is I worked one shoot, and it was a one-day shoot, and we rescued 90 pounds of food that then was converted into 75 meals. This wasn't a big shoot, guys. This was not like a 200-person crew. Like, it was small. So, like, just realizing that, like, and that there is hope. This isn't like as long as we do it, we just have to do it. And so the fact that there is a community of people, and every time I talk to people about EcoFixer, people are excited about it. They are really grateful for it. So that helps me keep moving forward and knowing. And I think that's what we have to really do focus on, is that there's hope that we can do this. We can. We just have to do it, Yeah. I think informing yourself on the stats of like why is helpful, because really like gets you to understand, because we're so good at being like pushing it away, but just being hopeful and actually doing it is what helps.
I think there are 100% real results on the ground. I still think it's easy to feel pretty low about this. I guess I'm going to slowly be the resident optimistic cynic on some level, I think. My initial answer, I said, I try to think about something else. And I don't mean that in deflecting thought about it, but more than, again, it's a lot to think about. And sometimes just keeping your attention on the task on the ground is the best way to approach it. Mm-hmm. And I guess for me, it's not because I'm afraid of some large, very cinematic, doomsday event. I feel like the human spirit can be incentivized into good directions and bad directions. And I think some of the things that will come with the negative sides of climate change will incentivize the worst parts of us. And that world seems super scary. And I think even if we are just we are not, but if even we are just full of BS up here, just the effort to try to do something, I think cultivates a certain attitude. And again, I think it cultivates the side of the human spirit that can be incentivized towards cooperative thinking. And I guess that would be my woo-woo kind of answer on that.
There's also starting I've only seen it overseas. It might be here too, but climate anxiety therapy is a real thing. It's happening, and there's some film sets that are providing that, which is super progressive. But I think mental health is important, and so just knowing there's resources out there is helpful and good. Knowing that you're not alone. This is a real thing. Climate anxiety is real, but there's hope. There's hope.
Yeah. Speaking on hope, I just have a couple comments about what I personally am interested in for Chicago as a film community, and then we can speak to it. But I just want to say waste aversion and minimizing our carbon footprint are admirable goals, and that we need passionate people to help us accomplish these things, and sustainability teams are the way of the future, and they provide employment, essential information, essential knowledge and education, resources, and it's super marketable, like we spoke to before. It makes you look great. My production had, diverted 90% of the waste. Like, how can that be bad? Personally, I'm interested in pursuing collaborations with productions and Chicago's stages as entities into investing in greener futures. I think it's possible. I'm early in this role, but I do feel hopeful. I'm so excited. I mean, I didn't even know these companies existed until someone told me I should do a panel. So, there's a huge learning curve, but it's here. So I just think that maybe CineSpace and the fields, the new stages, could have permanent refillable water stations. That doesn't seem crazy to me. I also think that they could partner with a Chicago composting company to collect catering and craft service compost biweekly. Services like that exist. I think that could be coordinated. I'd love to find a way to support catering teams so that they offer washable utensils and plates instead of to-go clamshells unless absolutely necessary. That seems like a really basic one that pre-COVID, we didn't have takeaway boxes for everything, and I see crews take takeaway boxes because of this convenient mindset, and then they're just sitting at the table 10 steps away, and it makes no sense to me. But I understand, maybe that means they need another crew member because they need a dishwasher permanently, whatever. But I think
But they were doing it.
But I think it's worth whatever effort it may be. That one they've already done. I'd love to help resource our craft service teams, ways to rescue unused food to local food banks, as we've spoken about. I was a second AC on a show years ago, and the head of craft service found out that I had kids. And I was making 3 lunches a day, and he would send me home with all of the cold cuts and cheese at the end of the week, and I would freeze it because it was pounds and pounds of it, and I made school lunches for my kids for a whole school year. And that was just to me, and I really didn't recognize how much food is just thrown out because they don't refrigerate it over the weekend because they don't run their vehicle or whatever. It's crazy. I had no idea that so much food got thrown out. So it'd be awesome. And those people are tired at the end of the week. They don't want to put it in their own car and drive it to the food bank. So we need someone to help facilitate, but it's completely manageable and doable. I'd like efforts. I would like all of these efforts that require resources that are already available but need financial and logistical support to be maybe part of a green tax incentive. Our mayor, our governor, very pro film industry. Again, I've said that I think the mayor is really, or the governor is really focused on employment through tax credit, and it does that. It provides, you would need an eco supervisor, you would need somebody standing to supervise recycling and waste distribution. It would employ people. So I'm really excited at the idea of some kind of incentive because it does just take money and resources, but it all is there. We just
Very
need
doable.
to, yeah, exactly. It's more doable than I initially realized, and that's exciting. I don't know if you guys have comments on what Chicago can do, or
We open the question.
yeah, let me just wrap it up.
Yeah.
Marlon, I think you spoke to this. The world is realizing the need for action now more than ever. And in order for there to be really major environmental sweeping impact is at a legislative level. Sustainability production standards, I think, are needed, and I think they need to be written into law so that there's accountability. At the industrial level, which Marlon, when he and I had a conversation, he told me about the extended producer responsibility, which is legislation that's currently in action that would require those who create the plastic products in the first place to be responsible for their production, use, and disposal, and they would have to follow regulations or they'd be fined otherwise. People need to take responsibility, and as individuals, we can do what we can, but this is really a much larger corporate scale that would have much that would have sweeping impact, and it's necessary. I think all of the efforts are necessary, and we do what we can, and maybe we can inspire our lawmakers as individuals, as communities, to be like, oh, people care about this, and this would make me look good if we impose regulations on Pepsi or whatever.
However we get there, I guess, you know, whether it's narcissism, greed, it doesn't matter, you know, let's play whatever card we have available to us. I think let's just be as practical can be, as flexible can be, because in an emerging market like sustainability in Chicago film industry, like it's not gonna be 100% the first time.
Sure.
Everything's not gonna be gotten right on the first try. It's a larger effort to make this work. And even in LA, like, you know, you heard them say, like, they're figuring it out, you know. So I think that flexibility of mind connected to a larger goal is probably where you gotta be to really approach this.
And before I open it up to questions, I think green sustainability can be super overwhelming, and I think we've all touched on that. And I often think that small things that I'm doing aren't enough. But what I want everyone to take away from this panel is that you can be aware and confident that doing something is always better than doing nothing. And that if we all approach it, it'll allow us as a community to make more impact, because if we give up or believe it's not worth it, then nothing's gonna get done. So,
I mean, all the things that you would have to do in the doomsday scenario, like, if that comes along, like, it's the same things you have to do to avoid the doomsday scenario, essentially. So you're kind of like one way or the other doing it, so just do it before we're all like riding around on dune buggies with like crossbows, like taking each other out Mad Max style, you know. I think we can, again, apply just practical logic to this situation, and that's the best case scenario. It doesn't have to be high-minded.
yeah. Cool. I don't know if anyone has any thoughts or questions. I mean, these two companies are available for hire, doing amazing work. So excited that they're here.
Do you have a question way back there? Yeah.
Hi. Did you guys hear the question?
Yeah, yeah, I did. Well, that's a great question.
Did it say, is it better to be a freelancer to connect to a company?
Yeah, that was the question.
I feel like you're kind of at default, as this is an emerging thing, relegated to being a freelancer. So I would say, like, I wouldn't want to put someone who's a production assistant in a bad situation and say, this is the only thing you can do to make your money. Because again, it's still emerging.
Yeah.
But I think being a production assistant who has a mind towards this, the same way if you're someone who wants to eventually be in the camera department, you slowly start hanging out by the camera department more, you hang out with the art department more. I think that is the approach. I think it's still in its early phases, at least from my perspective.
Yeah.
Where I don't know if you can be a full-time environmental assistant in
really
Chicago.
hard. It's really hard starting your own company. So if you have the wherewithal, do it. But if you want to just be working frequently, because there are multiple companies, there's multiple people that can hire you. And in regards to my company, I don't do PAs because I feel like this is a trained skill. And I want to make sure that this isn't thrown onto PAs. So it's really important to me that I train all of my employees, and I pay them to get trained. And that way, like when they're on set, they're not, I just want this to eventually be a department, you know? I hope that helped answer your question. It's a get-catch-20, yeah. But there are things that you can do if you're like, hey, if you just want me to help you out on this. But there's also some infrastructure stuff that goes along with it that are helpful when you work with another company to do it.
Yeah, like if you go out with either of these guys, they come with their compost bins and their recycling
And their
sorting systems and their
insurance
signs and their insurance and their reusable towels. And so, you know, it's great because they've got a lot of that stuff already worked out. And
So
maybe that's a great place to start, you know. And then if you think you want to go off on your own, please, we encourage any and all sustainability.
Yeah.
but there's also strength in community and togetherness.
So you were more asking about people who will eventually compete with us. Don't do it. Don't start your own. No, just joking. Of course, everyone, jump in. Let's make it happen. It's a big world out there. It seems like more productions are coming. If this becomes a thing that we're doing on all productions, like, there's more than enough room at the table.
And also, along the sustainability career path, you could also go into the big studios because they hire like full-time. It's not, some of them are hiring services like ours, but some of the bigger studios, they already have sustainability department heads, and so going in that career path, that's just not as localized. It's more looking on the big.
There is a future for you as well, I guess, it sounds like.
Yeah.
If you are just really into film and really into sustainability, and those two things are meeting in your heart and mind, it sounds like
Yeah.
out on the West Coast, there's a career for you. So if you want to start that here in Chicago, because it sounds like if you go out west with a nice Chicago resume, they tend to like that a lot, shows that you're a worker, so you're kicking ass on sustainability in Chicago, where the market's emerging. I bet that would look really good for you.
Cool. Any other questions or comments? I have a list of resources, just websites and stuff if anyone's interested. And of course, please approach any of us walking around if you have questions or need to hire a sustainability team.
And I'm always looking for reps because gigs just pop up out of nowhere. And so when they do, I have to like reach out to them. I have a list that I'm building of people. It's just similar to like a gaffer, you know. I have my list of, or even the AD, they have a list of PA. So I'm building a list of things like that because one of my team members might not be available. So I have to ask another person. So if it's something you're passionate about, interested in, feel free. I'm also looking for volunteers for Sundance. So if you want to get your feet into it, just see if it's something you like. That's also an option.
Awesome. I think that's it. Thanks for coming, guys.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you.